Welcome to the memory chapter. This is going to be a really fast chapter. We're going to go through things pretty quickly, but today I want to go through you what we call the memory model. When we talk about memory, memory is divided into parts, and once we put it all together, it helps to understand the types of memory that allow us to remember. And so I want to do a little lab with you first before we get to the memory model. Take out a piece of paper, scratch paper, anything to jot on, and a pencil or something like that. You don't need to do anything with it now because I'm going to go through a list of 12 items with you. So all I need you to do is pretend we're in class, just look at these items, okay? So don't write anything down just yet. Here we go. Here are the items. Paperclip, baby, gum, cupcake, pencil, stool sample, tape, marker, keys, Post-it, brain ball, and whistle. Okay, so what I'd like you to do now is write down as many of those as you can possibly remember. It's the best to have them in order. Write down as many as you can possibly remember. Pause it for a second. I'm going to give you just a moment to do that, then play it again to come back with me. Okay, so how many did you get? Did you get 3? Did you get 4? How many did you get right? Was that a little bit tough? Maybe you got a whole bunch, but they weren't exactly in order. Let's go through it one more time. So put your piece of paper away, turn it over, put it out of sight so you don't see it, okay? Just pay attention. Here we go. So the first one, paperclip. I don't even know what to say. This is paperclip. I use them all the time. Okay, whatever. This is my baby. For those of you who've seen this before, this is about what a fetus would look like at around 11 weeks gestation. This is actually my second baby. Have I ever told you about that? So I keep this baby on my desk. For those of you who've had me before, I keep this baby on my desk all the time at another school, not this school. I was gone one day and I came back the next day. There had been a sub. I came back the next day and my baby is not on my desk. I'm looking all around for it, can't find it. I'm asking my classes. Finally, there's this girl. Her name was Lindsay. Lindsay could not look me in the eye. I was like, something is up. So after class, Lindsay's like, Mrs. Miller, I know where your baby is. I'm like, super, where's my baby? She's like, I can't tell you. I'm like, what do you mean you can't tell me? Long story short, 2 boys take the baby off my desk when the sub is there and rip my baby's head off. And they're using the baby's head like an eraser. Like they're sticking it on the back of a pencil. I was furious. And she's like, no, Mrs. Miller, it's worse. I'm like, what? That was 7th period. They go to chemistry, 8th period. And now they have the whole baby and they're burning the baby over the Bunsen burner. All I'd like to say is those boys got a 3-day out of school suspension for messing with Mrs. Miller's baby. So this is baby number 2. Anyway, sad story, but this baby is very important to me. Okay, gum. I always have gum on hand. With the mask, this is maybe not as important, but I always have gum. Cupcake. Oh, same school. Girl was same school as, the baby story. A girl would get her stuff done right away and she would knit in class. She's like, Mrs. Miller, can I knit you a cupcake? And I was like, yeah. She's like, what's your favorite? And I was like, red velvet. And she's like, do you want sprinkles? And I was like, heck yeah. So this is a knitted cupcake. I've had it for years. Pencil, because I think mechanical pencils are the greatest, and I have 100 of them. This is 60-year-old humor. This is a stool sample, but do you see inside there's like a little miniature stool? I know, right? It's, okay, whatever. It's a stool sample. Tape. I always got my trusty tape dispenser on my desk. The marker, because you know how much I'm always at the board. I'm using the marker. Here are my keys. I've got my Deacon Shield and JP2 logo on there. Post-its. I am a Post-it note freak. I use Post-its all the time. If you've ever had me before, we used to do the Post-it parade. Brain ball. This is, can you see it? This is like one of those little squishy things, those little stress relievers. In fact, it's from TOPS. It's the teaching of psychology in secondary schools. It's a group I belong to from the APA, the American Psychological Association. This is my little stressor brain ball. And finally, a whistle. Also, if you've ever had me before, I use the whistle when we do the Industrial Revolution because you have to cut some stuff out. Do you remember that? You remember when I had made you cut stuff? Get to work! Okay, so there we go. There are your 12 items. Go. Write down what you can remember in order. If you need to pause it, write them down, come back to me. So, how many did you get this time? Did you get more this time, or did you do better at it? How many did you get in order? Think about that question. Okay, so let's just put that aside for now. And I want to go to the memory model. So what I want to talk to you about is the types of memory and how we use those types of memory to transfer memory from what we call sensory memory into long-term memory. And then how do you get it out? Have you ever had that experience when you know something? Like I see this all the time. Like students know it, they just can't retrieve it. They just can't quite get to it. Okay, so here we go. Write this down in your notebook, please. Let's start with the two short-term types, not even the short-term types, the two really brief types of memory. So let's start here. This is going to be like a little map. We have if we see something, this is called iconic memory. ICONIC. If we see something, it's called iconic memory. Or if we hear something. This is called echoic, like an echo, ECHOIC. This is called echoic memory. So we're gonna start here, okay? So if we're gonna start here, what we're going to put this into is known as sensory memory. And sensory memory is really, really short. It's very, very brief. Remember, think about the sensations that we have. There's other types of memory besides iconic and echoic. For our purposes, these are the most important. So it's just that real brief, you see something, you hear something, it's gonna be real quick, okay? Now, if you pay attention to what you see or what you hear, so let's write pay attention, you're going to transfer this to what's known as short-term memory, and we abbreviate it STM, short-term memory, or we're even going to call it working memory. And we'll talk about working memory here also in the next couple of days. Now, that's if you pay attention to what you see or what you hear. If you don't pay attention, let's go over here, you don't pay attention, it's forgotten. Here, let me make the arrow. So if you don't pay attention to what you see or hear, you forget it. If you do pay attention, it goes into what's called your short-term memory or your working memory. Now, once it's in your short-term memory or your working memory, now we need to talk about, and I'm going to turn this just a little bit, now we need to talk about where it goes to. Now it goes to your long-term memory, LTM. However, it's not quite as easy to get it to long-term memory. This takes a little bit of deep processing. And what I mean by deep processing is this idea that we have to like attach meaning. So I don't know, this says attach meaning, we're doing deep processing. So I don't know if you noticed what I did on that little lab experiment with the items, but the second time I went through them, I tried to attach meaning for you. I told you the story about my baby. I told you that my keys have the logo on them. Whatever it happens to be, that's when you attach meaning. Do you remember on the very first day of school when we did the slippery snakes and half of the room, I wanted you to think about what you could visualize, and the other half of the room I wanted you to think about how I pronounced the words? The part of the room that had an easy time recalling those or retrieving those ideas were the ones who attached meaning, the ones who thought about them. However, if we're going to attach meaning and have deep processing, it doesn't exactly mean that you're necessarily going to transfer the things that you thought about, paid attention to, into long-term memory. You also need to work at rehearsal. And rehearsal is just like practice. So if you're going to attach meaning and do some deep processing, you have to rehearse it. You have to practice it. Just like if you have a piano recital or a big game, you have to rehearse the plays. Otherwise, you don't really, like, you can get them maybe to long-term memory, but it's very difficult to get them out. What I want you to understand is once you get them to the long-term memory, this is how you're going to retrieve it. That's not how you spell retrieval, R-E-T-R-I-E-V-A-L, retrieval. And so when we talk about retrieval, it means, okay, it's in your long-term memory, how do you bring it back out of long-term memory to remember it? Now, what if it's in your short-term memory, you've paid attention to it, but you don't rehearse it? If you don't practice it and you don't rehearse it, it is forgotten. So if there's no rehearsal, you've attached meaning, there's deep processing, you've studied, you've practiced, you've done, lots of work with it. If you don't keep rehearsing it, it's going to be forgotten, even if it got to your long-term memory. If you keep rehearsing it and keep thinking about it and working with it and doing it, it's in your long-term memory, and then we just have to retrieve it. How do we retrieve it? Usually back to rehearsal. Does that make sense to you? I hope it does. We're going to work a lot with this memory model. In fact, you should probably know that there's going to be a quiz coming at you where you're going to essentially have to explain this memory model. So make sure you have it written down. When we get to class, if you have any questions, please let's talk about it. Obviously, we're going to talk about it regardless, but understand that we're starting here with sensory memory. Then it's going into short-term and working memory. Eventually, it'll go to long-term memory if we can do things. But just because it's in long-term memory doesn't necessarily mean we can get it back out. We can get that information back out of our brains. And what happens when we forget it? Why do we forget it? Probably because there's not enough meaning attached or we didn't rehearse it. So here we go again. All right, can you write down the 12 list of items again in order one more time? I'm going to show you them, and then I'm going to give you your third opportunity to write them. Here we go. I'm gonna go through them really fast. Paperclip, baby, gum, cupcake, pencil, stool sample, tape, marker, keys, Post-it, brain ball, whistle. All right, on a different area, try to remember them all in order. Believe me, when we get to class, we're gonna work on it again and see how you did. All right, talk to you later. Until the next time.